All right, so the Whiplash 360 is gone. It is out and into another vehicle. Here it is. This is a 69 Barracuda. It's my dad's, but he decided to become a new owner of my 360 here. So I pulled this out. Nothing wrong with it. Actually ran really good. Ran 1385 in the quarter in my pickup truck, actually. So putting it in here, and I got this going in. So this is a 408 stroker, scat kit, scat I-beams, ARP 2000 rod bolts, ARP main studs, head studs, trick flow heads, Molle pistons. It's 11-to-1 compression. Harlan Sharp rockers. Use a steamroller cam, and I think the cam is 246, 250 at 50 thousandths, and it's like, so these are 1:6 ratio rockers. I believe these would be, it's 592 603 lift at the valve. So this thing should be a pretty hot rocket, I tell you. So it's just coming along, waiting on some parts, but I'm getting ready to throw this in the truck. And we're gonna get this going back in this 69 CUDA and see where it can go. So we're hoping to get it on the quarter mile and try and see what it can run. Okay, I did have one guy ask, what does it take to put a 46RH into one of these? And so 46RH, 518, whatever you want to call them. So these are out of, I'm trying to think, so like maybe 91 to 96 Dodge trucks. And what really will tell you what it is, so this is the pins that run the overdrive and lockup. If it's a 3-pin, that means it's overdrive and lockup. If it's 2, that means it just has overdrive. So ideally you want the one with the lockup, that way you can run a loose converter and a lockup. But just to kind of show you, it's kind of, I'm not sure if it's easy to tell because this one's on this creeper, but this is basically just a 727 with overdrive in the back of it and a lockup converter. So if you look at the two from here forward, they're basically the same. I mean, they're really not much different. They use a lot of the same parts. The drums are the same, the clutches, all kinds of stuff. The output shaft on the rear, like, is the same spline. If you look, so this has a cable-driven speedo. It's kind of hard to see it on this one, but yeah, so this one does too. These use the exact same gear drive in the rear of the case, so you can actually use the factory gear in this one to run your speedo in your truck. So that's cool. Same thing, uses the same style of neutral safety switch here. So you can, that's plug and play. The other part, the shifter mechanism and the kickdown is exactly the same as the 727. So you can use your factory kickdown and linkage and everything. And I mean, you can see like all the brackets are here for that. It's all pretty much, I mean, really, it's just a newer version of a 727 is really all this is. And so it makes it real, it's honestly pretty easy to swap one in. You do need to get a cross member from, say, like a late 80s pickup truck for one of these. I should have mine in here. But there's 2 side braces, the one on the left and the one on the right. I believe the one on the right, I had to use the original one from the truck, and I had to bolt it to the frame. And I cut the holes in here for the cross member to make it fit. This one was on the cross member when I got it. That's from the 80s truck. And I had to waller the holes out on the frame to make it fit. But it pretty much, it bolts right into the factory placement. And I'm trying to think here. And you can actually use your original drive shaft out of this too, because it actually uses the same output spline as the 727. So you just have to get this shortened a couple inches. It's, you know, this transmission's like 3 inches longer maybe than a 727, if that even, or they're pretty close. But actually it might not even be different. I can't tell. So yeah, just from checking, so like from the back of the case to here, this one's like 22 1/4, and this one is right about like 19.5. So you will have to get it shortened to run this one because this one is just a touch longer. But so, and honestly, the greatest thing about this transmission is the fact that the diesel trucks use basically a variation of this with a different bell housing, but basically from here back, the diesel transmission is practically the same. Some extra clutches, beefier planetary gears, but beyond that, practically the same transmission. So the diesel aftermarket is what really makes this an awesome transmission to run in this, because what I actually have in this one is a full manual Muldoon's, it's a 47 RH valve body for a diesel truck, but it works in this just fine too. And it actually doesn't have any kickdown linkage. It's just full manual. So it just has a static valve body pressure. This part here is pretty easy, just wire it up on toggle switches. So there's a ground in the center. And then, actually, no, I'm wrong. There is a 12 volt ignition source in the middle. And then there's a ground on each side. And so basically one does your lockup and one does the overdrive. So when you wire it in, I'll show you how I got mine set up on this. So I actually have a Hurst quarter stick, and this is actually a I'm sorry, not transmission. This is actually a shifter for a 727, but it will, like, the bracket bolts right up on that 46 RH. No problem. Set it, runs great. These, you wire one end into ground on each one of them. So on mine, this would be my overdrive, and this is my lockup. And the beauty of the Muldoon's valve body, say if you got this shifter pulled back into first gear, you can click this lockup in, and it will not go into lockup until you hit second. Once you're in second gear, it's locked up on the converter. And then so you can go from second into third locked up, and then click it into overdrive, and you're in lockup from second, third into fourth. And actually, if you want on this one, this is an extra feature that the Fire Punk one I don't think had. You can kick it back down from fourth into third gear while it's still locked up. Now, the only thing though, say if you have it in overdrive locked up, you got to pull the shifter back. It will stay in fourth locked. It will not go down into second unless you unlock both of these. But honestly, it's pretty easy. I mean, I got wiring in here that just runs a 12 volt ignition to that, and then just the two grounds on these. It's pretty simple, really. I would say the biggest thing to do on it to get one swapped in is actually probably the cross member is probably the most work out of all of it. And it's still primarily bolt in. Okay, so now I'm under the truck. Get this out of the way. So this right up in here, these two bolt spots, those are actually the factory location for the bolts on the factory cross member. So this cross member is literally a bolt in piece. You don't have to mess with anything on this other than these side brackets. Like I said, I had to waller the holes out on this. This is the factory spot on the cross member for these. This side is the factory cross member to this truck for the 727 cross member. And what I did is I bolted it to the frame, and then up here is where I drilled the holes out to bolt it up. Now this mount here, this is really where you kind of have to do some work. So what I did is I bolted this to the transmission and set it on top of this cross member, and then marked where I needed to drill the holes out, because if you look, so these are the factory holes right here, and there's another set back there, you might be able to see them. So back here, you know, like you pretty much have to set this, because it actually will come forward a bit. And what you'll have to do when you just mark the holes, you just drill them out where you need them, and then this will actually set your rear transmission mount where it needs to be, because it's actually kind of off. So it will be, the transmission mount would actually be too far back. So you need to drill it into the correct placement. But like I said, it bolts right up to that, you know, your rear end and everything. You just get the drive shaft shortened. It's the same. The speedo cable works. Neutral safety switch. I didn't do anything with this neutral safety switch wiring. This is the factory part from the truck. and it actually works. And then this is like my harness I made. This is actually out of like, my transmission's out of a 95 Dodge truck. But, so it's got the 3-pin harness. That actually cut out there, so I was talking about that. I got that plug down there wired in for this. Now, I think in the late 80s, they went to just the overdrive without the lockup. And then maybe like 91-ish, I think, is when they went to the lockup trans. So a good resource for parts for these is actually Cope Racing Transmissions. That guy actually has a lot of stuff talking about swapping this overdrive trans into one. A lot better setup than like a Gear Vendor overdrive, because it's got actually a deeper overdrive ratio and the lockup, which you can't get on one of these. So, I mean, really, they're pretty similar transmissions. Let me see here. So, like the factory plate that goes from here to here, like that covers the bottom of the bell housing, same thing as a 727. You can use your factory flex plate. It will bolt up, you know, the offset hole and everything lines right up on one of these. You can use like a Magnum starter or the factory starter. I prefer using the Magnum one because it's a bit smaller, easier to fit headers. And let me see here. The only thing that does suck, and I will preface this, if you have the lockup version, the converters are extremely expensive. This is a stock one, and like stock loose stall. It's like, I don't know, flashed about 2,400 maybe, but you can get one off eBay for like 300 bucks. This one here is like 1,400, like super expensive. So if you don't care about the lockup, you can get the non-lockup trans and just run a 727 converter in it. It's pretty simple. I guess to finish this off, so if you do get one out of a 2nd gen Ram, you can use the dipstick out of the 2nd gen truck for one of these. It will bolt in. You do need to trim the firewall right there. You can kind of see where I cut that a little bit. I wouldn't use the 727 dipstick because I'm not sure the level's the same. The pans are different. These are a little deeper. And you will need the late 80s style rear mount for this cross member out of the 80s truck. And honestly, as far as get one built, I mean, parts are pretty abundant. Anything, it's like, if you find somebody who's competent with the diesel transmission, they're not gonna have any issues going through this for you. And I really like having the full manual. This thing shifts great, shifts hard, firm, but not like overly harsh by any means. It's been awesome. I got a 391 gear. This thing cruises 70 mile an hour, like 2,500, you know, with 391s, which is awesome. It runs like 2,200 or maybe, no, I think it's about $2,000 at 60 and 80 mile an hour. It's about 2,700. It's really awesome. It's got like a 6.9 overdrive in the rear of it. So if you're thinking about it, honestly, the majority of it's bolt-in, really fucking easy, super simple. I would 100% recommend it. So much better than having 3 gears. It's been awesome in this truck. I drag race with it. I beat on it, burnouts. Haven't had an issue. I did have this trans gone through a little bit just to hold the power of my 408 a little better. I got upgraded planetaries and a billet drum. Anything that's a weak point on a 727 is a weak point on this, just by the way. So you do kind of want a billet drum in there if you plan on drag racing it. Just an FYI. They can blow up. Beyond that, awesome transmission. I would highly recommend it. It's pretty easy to swap. A little bit expensive. I mean, to build a similar 727, it's kind of similar money, but you know, most of the parts are about the same price, but the valve bodies and converters are a lot more expensive for these. So just an FYI. Honestly, though, worth the money. So I would 100% recommend them.